Have you ever thought about how many times the Skywalker lightsaber, the Graflex lightsaber, has changed hands throughout the Star Wars movies? So you have the obvious times. This started out as Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. It became Luke Skywalker's lightsaber after that, and then later on it became Rey's lightsaber. But throughout the Star Wars series, this lightsaber changed hands many other times, and a variety of other people either had this lightsaber briefly or stored it for a certain amount of time. So let's talk about where this lightsaber started and where it's going in the future Star Wars movies. So this started out as Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. He built it sometime between Episode 2 and Episode 3 because his previous lightsaber had been destroyed in Episode 2. And in Revenge of the Sith, this lightsaber is used to do many very bad things. He uses it to kill Dooku, younglings, lots of other people, and, to march alongside with the clones and, doing all their destruction and stuff. And it's also the saber he uses to duel with Obi-Wan, although he is defeated in the end and Obi-Wan takes the saber away from him. But this is very much, it's arguably Darth Vader's first lightsaber, even though it's blue-bladed, because Anakin uses it as he's kind of turning to the dark side and after he's turned to the dark side. So Obi-Wan has this for a while. He keeps it on Tatooine, and he gives the saber to Luke in A New Hope. And in that movie, this lightsaber doesn't really do much. It's more of a symbol and kind of an heirloom than anything, or even a little bit of a novelty. Luke waves it around kind of when he's visiting Obi-Wan a little bit, and he gets a little backstory on some of the history with the Clone Wars. Although Obi-Wan's kind of leaving out a little bit of key information, but aside from that, it's just kind of a little tie to Luke's past and just the past in general, and the Jedi and Clone Wars, etc. Then when Obi-Wan is training Luke a little bit, when they're on the Millennium Falcon a bit later, Luke uses it to fight off the little laser things from that, that spherical thing that fires the little annoying lasers at him, and he uses the Force to deflect some of those lasers. But it seems kind of like a game, and that's how Han Solo certainly sees it. He's like, oh, it's just some kind of party trick you'd have, or a little amusement to be able to do that with the lightsaber. And it's not used for a duel or anything in this film, so that's the extent of the use of this lightsaber in A New Hope. In Empire Strikes Back, this lightsaber is very, very important, and Luke is starting to become a Jedi. Toward the beginning of the movie, when he's on Hoth, he uses the lightsaber when he's fighting against the Imperials. He kind of slices open that AT-AT, which, by the way, I hate calling AT-ATs. I'd rather call them AT-ATs. I guess I could call them Imperial Walkers. Anyway, you're supposed to call them AT-ATs, but I'm not a fan of that pronunciation. Luke is using it as a tool against the Imperials, but then he has that moment when he's, knocked out by the Wampa and dragged back to the Wampa's cave, and the lightsaber gets wedged in a snow ice pile. So this leads up to another big moment for the lightsaber, and that's when Luke is hanging upside down in this cave. His feet are frozen to the cave ceiling, and in order to free himself, he reaches out with the Force to call his lightsaber to him, and then he slices around his feet to free himself from the ice. So that's an early demonstration of Luke's growing Force abilities and his ability to channel the Force much better than before. And he also used the lightsaber to cut off the Wampa's arm as he's getting away too. It's not enough for him to escape the Wampa, though. He's not having the best day. He's caught in a blizzard and he kind of collapses and has this vision of Obi-Wan telling him to go to Dagobah to train with Yoda. And right after he has that vision, he collapses. Han Solo happens to find him, and this is when Han uses the lightsaber. Han uses the lightsaber to slice open the collapsed and dead Tauntaun, and he puts Luke inside the Tauntaun during this blizzard to keep Luke warm and save his life. And I just said lukewarm. Oh well. So he puts him in the Tauntaun, and this is when Han Solo is actually using the lightsaber, which is the weapon that he had just kind of dissed in the previous movie. So, oh well, he'll use it to save someone's life. Now, later on, Luke has this with him on Dagobah. He doesn't really do much with it except in the cave scene, and that's when Yoda says Luke doesn't need to bring weapons with him, but Luke is very wary and brings weapons with him anyway, lightsaber and blaster. And he gets this kind of vision of Vader, and they have this very brief light duel, and that's the first time we see the lightsaber used in a duel in this trilogy. And Luke wins, but he finds out the face beneath the Vader mask is his own, so that kind of rattles him a little bit. A little bit later, he actually uses the lightsaber to face the real Darth Vader. So that's arguably the most famous Star Wars lightsaber duel of all time, the Luke versus Vader duel in Empire Strikes Back. And Luke is very outmatched by Vader. He has no chance. Vader is not even trying this hard in that duel. Vader's main objective is to try to get Luke to turn to the dark side, so he's just kind of deflecting, whenever Luke is kind of coming at him with the lightsaber, Vader's deflecting it, but he has the upper hand for this whole battle, basically. And then there's the I am your father scene, and Luke is devastated, and insult to injury, Vader cuts off his hand around then, and then the lightsaber tumbles down, and it seems like we'll never see it again because it falls from a very high place, and it doesn't even seem likely it would survive the fall, but at any rate, that's the last time we see it in Empire Strikes Back, and we don't really expect to see it again. And in Return of the Jedi, there's not really any mention of this saber. And Vader says, "Oh, I see you built a new lightsaber," so that's kind of a little reference to him losing the previous lightsaber, but that's about all we get. In The Force Awakens, this lightsaber pops up again. And somehow Maz Kanata comes into possession of it. We're not really clear on how that happens. And when she and Han and Finn and Chewie are visiting Maz Kanata on Takodana, the lightsaber calls to her. So Rey hears these kind of whispers in the basement, and she kind of wanders down there and finds the saber and gets these different snippets of where the saber's been, I guess. So like little snippets of Bespin and other things that have happened. And she doesn't want the saber, though, in which, can you really blame her? If you first saw a saber and got these like weird visions of a lot of bad things, that wouldn't really be a very convincing reason to actually take the lightsaber. So she refuses it. Finn ends up having it for a little while, and he uses it to fight against some of the stormtroopers. He even used it against Kylo Ren, which is a pretty big deal since he's a non-Force user. A non-Force user using a lightsaber against a Force user in lightsaber combat. We haven't really seen that before. I mean, we had seen Han slice open the Tauntaun briefly, but that was the extent of, non-Force users using a lightsaber. That was the extent that we had seen before that. So Finn uses it for a while, but he's totally outmatched by Kylo Ren. There's no way a non-Force user can defeat a Force user in a lightsaber duel. That would be unheard of. And then there's a very similar moment where the lightsaber's in the snow again, much like it was in Empire Strikes Back, and it kind of wiggles out in the same way, and Rey calls it to her. And at the same time, Kylo Ren had been trying to call it to him, but somehow she's stronger. She's able to get the lightsaber, and she kind of accepts her destiny as a future Jedi at that moment. She accepts the lightsaber. She fights Kylo Ren with it. She, pretty much wins. And that's the end of the lightsaber in that movie, except for when she goes to find Luke and offers his saber back to him, kind of saying, "Hey, please train me, here's your lightsaber back." So A lot of big moments with this lightsaber in Force Awakens too. Finally, Last Jedi picks up where Force Awakens had left off, and Luke takes the saber, he tosses it over his shoulder, and I know that kind of annoyed some people. I thought that was okay. So Luke doesn't accept the saber for a while, and Rey has it throughout the movie. She ends up using it. She brings it to Kylo, and Snoke has it in his possession briefly, but then both of them kind of combine forces, and Kylo uses the Force to slice through Snoke with this, killing Snoke, with this lightsaber. And then Rey is in possession of the lightsaber again, and she and Kylo Ren team up to fight off all of the guards together. And she even tosses it to him at one point so that he can take out one of the guards. So it shows a little bit of their teamwork, but this was also the saber used to slice through Snoke. Then, they end up disagreeing. She doesn't want to join him. She's a little leery of his motives, and they end up fighting over the lightsaber again. Except instead of like in The Force Awakens when it goes to her, this time they're kind of equally matched, pulling the lightsaber, in both directions. So I think it shows that they're actually quite equal in their Force abilities at this point. And then it ends up splitting in half because there's so much power behind it. And it seems destroyed. Rey ends up with both of the pieces of the saber. Finally, Luke projects this saber into his battle with Kylo Ren. When there's that Force projected Luke, he just faces Kylo Ren with this, and it really upsets Kylo, even though Kylo should have known that this lightsaber had already been destroyed. But I think it's a visual cue to the viewers as well. So that's the lightsaber in a nutshell.